Okay, we are live with Carolina poets. Welcome to Poetry Goes Viral. This is a bi-monthly series hosted on the Carolina Poets Facebook page and on our YouTube channel. We are here the second and fourth Thursdays of each month, and I'm your host, Andrew Clark. I'd like to thank my co-host, Kimberly Sims Gibbs, who helps host this series. For each reading, we feature three poets with some connection to the Carolinas. Sometimes we invite a neighbor. We like to invite neighbors, which means that we host some of the most talented poets on the planet from two of the writingest states. Tonight, we are fortunate to have three powerful voices. We will hear first from Mr. Enlightenment, then we'll hear from Professor Earl Braggs, and Bill Newby. Please ask any questions you have for our poets in the comments below the broadcast, either on YouTube or on Facebook. We will have a short Q&A session at the end. So we feature established poets and emerging voices as part of Carolina Poets, and tonight you're in for a real treat. Up first, we're going to have Mr. Enlightenment. Mr. Enlightenment was born in the small town of Walterboro, South Carolina. He grew up listening to his favorite hip-hop artists, often writing raps of his own. His hip-hop roots are evident in his poetry. While enrolled at Presbyterian College, Mr. Enlightenment took a creative writing poetry class. It was at that time he put together his first collection of poems. In 2009, he released his first chapbook, Wallets and Purses. He released two more, Light and A Poet's Playground. He has also released two poetry CDs, Worth My Weight in Watts in 2015 and Summer Solstice 2017. Mr. Enlightenment's name is a play on words stemming from his job as an educator, also because he wanted to shine on stage while delivering his poems. He has performed at various venues in South Carolina and Georgia. His website is www.passthelight.com. I love that. PASSDALIGHT.com. And I'll drop that link while he's reading. You can also follow him on social media at Kilowatt Poet and on Facebook at Pass the Light. And with that, I'm going to bring to our virtual stage Mr. Enlightenment. How are you, sir?
Hello. Thanks for, I want to give a shout out to Carolina Poets for giving me the opportunity to come and read tonight. I just want to talk a little bit about as you heard, the light references throughout the biography that Andrew was reading. So when I was coming up with my poet name, I decided to do a spinoff of, my day job as an educator. So, when you're teaching someone, you have that light bulb moment. So that's where it came about. Also, I enlighten, giving information to people. So I went with Mr. Enlightenment as my poetry name. So light bulb is my official logo, and I use light references throughout my poems. And this first poem is the one I want to do. I do this kind of to open my sets most of the time. This was called Let There Be Light. So when I'm out performing, reading, I say lights on before every poem, and it's lights out at the end. The little silence at the end. I'm not sure if I should clap or snap, so I say lights out, and the poem's over. So occasionally I'll do lights on. I'll definitely do lights out when I finish my poem. So this is my introduction poem. This is called Let There Be Light. Lights on. I remember when Mom used to call me home before the street lights came on. Now I feel at home on stage when the lights are on. Senior year undergrad, that's when the light came on. Time to illuminate, right like I'm afraid of the dark. My pen is a light bulb, a match waiting for that spark. When I start to shine, I don't plan on flickering. My brain is a generator, ready to kick in like an NFL punter. Try to take my shine, I got enough radiance to go around. I'll even pass it out like free samples. Like the first attempts of Neanderthals trying to create fire. You probably fizz out before you replicate me. When someone closes the gap, it's time to increase the voltage. Become more ultraviolet. For every sunrise, there's a sunset, but not if I can help it. Prepare for my summer solstice. Let there be light. Lights out. So as you've heard, the light references. So that is my introduction poem. I usually start the set off with that one. So I write about a lot of different topics, life, relationships, current events, just at times just being creative. I'm a big sports fan, so you might see a sports reference or two in a poem. So I want to lead into this poem right here, which is kind of addresses the best and worst thing about sports, which is fans. So as fans, we put these athletes up on a pedestal. And when they do something wrong or make the bad decision, we pretty much knock them down as if they're not regular human beings. So we kind of forget that they're just like us. They just a little stronger, a little faster. They can shoot farther, shoot better. Like my jump shot is not Steph Curry worthy. So we forget they're just regular people. They just have a little more athletic ability than the average person. So this poem, it addresses a few famous sports figures and kind of how they had their rough patch and kind of had the rug pulled from under them. So this poem is called Frankenstein Syndrome. Society creates monsters. When they get a mind of their own, we organize angry mobs, equipped with an artillery of silver bullets. Fans boost egos only to see their heads enlarge. One narcissistic act too many, and we're quick to want to decapitate. When you add fire to the flame, don't blame the fire for being out of control. $100 million man, poised in the shotgun, throwing bullets to dirty birds. One of the fastest quarterbacks ever, but couldn't outrun the bad news. He was responsible for the deaths of hundreds of dogs. Rushed by the PETA protesters faster than Dwight Freeney around left tackles. Nike stripped him of endorsements like he worked at the Blue Flame, the league's best-selling jersey, and some of his biggest fans wanted to cremate his career. Number 7 jerseys going up in flames. Nittany Lion, top of the gridiron food chain, patrolling the prairies of the Big Ten. To him, winning was second nature. It was only natural to label him as a legend, a lifestyle statue to moralize invincibility. Even the most ferocious warriors have an Achilles heel. It turned out to be a friendship. It's only human nature to want to help, but trying to cover up his friend's soiled past led to him being buried. His wins were taken away quicker than the Oregon Duck scoring drive. His institution was forced to divorce him, and he wasn't even given the proper alimony. Without the game he loved, his life clock quickly showed all zeros. Cycling champ that made a living out of cruising through the Champs-Élysées. Pedaling through the French mountains wasn't his only uphill battle. Cancer made him push twice as hard. His story was an inspiration to us all. Everybody wore yellow wristbands to match his collection of yellow jerseys. Live strong was the battle cry. Along with the accumulation of victories came an accumulation of naysayers. That kind of dominance couldn't be natural. He denied allegations to the end. If he did take steroids, the fans deserved to be injected with the truth. Society creates monsters. When they get a mind of their own, we organize angry mobs, equipped with an artillery of silver bullets. Fans boost egos only to see their heads enlarge. One narcissistic act too many, and we're quick to want to decapitate. When you add fire to the flame, don't blame the fire for being out of control. Lights out. So this next, I kind of have a sports theme going with these next poem. This poem addresses the controversial topic, NCAA. Are we going to pay the athletes? Should we pay the athletes? I heard Brian Gumbel say the NCAA has the perfect business model. where you get to keep all the profits and you don't have to pay your employees. So I played D2 college football. So I wasn't on the level of Alabama or Clemson. We're, just trying to keep our career going after high school. I mean, I wouldn't mind getting a little something after the game. You hear about the boosters and the handshakes with the $100 bills. So I wouldn't have mind one or two games would get congratulated like that. So it's a catch-22. It's like, how do you pay the athletes? How do you pay the different sports? Because you got the football teams that make all the revenue. They can't have all the money. So that's another kind of can of worms. But this kind of from the athlete's point of view and kind of the way NCAA deals with their issues. So this poem is called Eligible for the Moment. Spectators want to see some action. So teams throw the ball around in the midst of a scrimmage. People don't follow the rules, encroach the line of scrimmage. Athletics is big business, so morals get diminished. Amateurism as we know it is quintessentially finished. It used to be an even exchange, 20 hours of athletic competition for a college education. But the tide has turned like the Crimson team in the SEC. When's the last time 100,000 spectators gathered for a dissertation? Today's generation wants the fruits of the labor while omitting the harvesting process. Patience has vanished like the banners of the Fab Five. Law and medical school takes too much time. Why bother when you can go pro in 3 years? Getting paid professionally is a dream for most student athletes, but only a handful will actually hold up a jersey with a commissioner. And if it means they can be a few $100s richer, they'll hoist their jerseys up like legends' numbers in the rafters to the highest bidder. It seems innocent enough, but the NCAA comes down hard on the youngster, like thunderstorms on a summer afternoon. You can't just blame the kids. Adults are even worse. Coaches sit on living room couches and tell more lies than politicians. They'll throw the education word around as a diversion. But the main concern is the winning percentage, not about the graduation rate. Instead of parents being the shield, they start offering the kids as sacrificial lambs. I guess since they gave birth to such gifted athletes, they should be rewarded with a few gifts. Somehow the best interests of the athlete were forgotten. All the kid wanted to do was play a little ball, and you don't have to play a full court press to get trapped. Agents pose as friends of the program, discuss draft status, and all of a sudden an amateur is trapped, suspended for the season. Now all they can do is go to class. When did that become part of the plan? Spectators want to see some action, so teams throw the ball around in the midst of a scrimmage. People don't follow the rules, encroach the line of scrimmage. Athletics is big business, so morals get diminished. Amateurism as we know it is quintessentially finished. Lights out. So that's the dilemma right there. I think the athletes should get paid a little bit. It's kind of hard to equally pay everybody. So, the third string running back is not going to be getting paid as much as the starting quarterback. So there you have, we're putting in same amount of practice hours, same amount of blood, sweat, and tears, but everybody's not bringing home their revenue. So imagine, Trevor Lawrence wasn't getting paid at all, and everybody in Death Valley is wearing his jersey. Or when Marcus Lattimore was playing for Carolina, the whole stadium has his jersey on. He's not getting anything from it. So that's the dilemma for the NCAA. So I just want to tackle that topic right there with that poem. So I want to transition a little bit from sports. I'm a sports guy. I want to do a little storytelling now. So this poem is a fictitious tale about a young man who had a dream of a special Christmas, but it didn't end up being the way he envisioned it. So this poem is called A Christmas to Forget. My girl was a vegetarian. We were known to argue about our diet. This Christmas, I decided to go for the healthy alternative and give her a few carrots. I envisioned the family meal, seeing relatives I haven't seen in months. What better way to introduce them to the newest relative, my fiance? I was shocked to find out she wasn't feeling being a new addition, so she left like Bobby. That threw a wrench in my plans. On the bright side of things, I took back those carrots, which helped to mend my broken wallet, but I didn't have the tools to repair a broken heart that remained in 1,000 pieces. I sought therapy in the form of a bartender and a shot glass. It was a thing of beauty like Stockton and Malone. He passed me a drink and I slammed it down. The hours and the minutes shot past. Through my empty glass, I saw the silhouette of an angel. She saw me in my drunken state and decided to take a trip. She pulled up a chair and proceeded to pick me out of the dumps. Before long, I even cracked a smile. I guess she found treasure in someone else's trash. I woke up to a bird chirping outside my window. On a pillow adjacent to me was a box with a bow. Inside was a card with her number and name. It read, "I hope you enjoyed my Christmas gift to you." The box signified the moments of ecstasy that I captured, but somewhere out there is still my forever. I was Cinderella when the clock struck 12. My horse and carriage turned to a pumpkin. Holiday wishes of perfection. I was hoping to stand with her in front of an altar. Instead, I ended up with a one-night stand. Lights out. All right, so I'm going to stay in the relationship avenue right here. We're going to talk about the ups and downs of love in this poem. So this poem is called "The Thrill Is Gone." So when I write, another side note, when I write poems, I kind of take a songwriter's mentality. So I kind of put a couple different stories together. I tie them in with some music terms and musical artists. So if you can catch a couple references in there. So this one is called The Thrill Is Gone. When love is good, everything is in sync. Like the boy band led by Justin Timberlake. When it's bad, arguments and disappointments hit lower than the voice of Barry White. Although the high notes of a soloist give an audience chills, there's nothing like the combination of love and commitment found in a duet. I've always heard it takes two to make a thing go right. Lovers often find themselves somewhere between A Hard Place and DJ Easy Rock. Our relationship was Fight Club. We never spoke of it. Kept things underground like a Talib Kweli mixtape. When our friends asked how things were going, we kept it unannounced like Beyonce's self-titled release. The relationship status never became a trending topic, but we were closer than hashtags behind closed doors. Even if we fought, the scorecard never ended up in your news feed, just some healthy sparring between two opinionated hearts. The type of perfection only found in the artist's first release. The type of monogamy that would get a standing ovation from Simon, but we never did what Simon said. Independent relationships tend to stand the test of time. Our favorite album was Thriller. Now the thrill is gone. When you mention her, I just moonwalk around the subject. But the memories of her are confrontational. They always want to be starting something. It's hard to walk away from your magnum opus when we both made mistakes. Blame gets passed around like the microphone during a freestyle session. Miseducated when it comes to relationships. Lauryn Hill on repeat as I experiment with females. The wrong kind of temperament poured into my graduated cylinder. I've gone right when I should have went left. I was all ears when I should have been deaf. Gullible when she mentioned love. Auditory transmission to hearing aids. Second guess my decision to approach her unprotected. Now when I think of her, it burns. When love is good, everything is in sync. Like the boy band led by Justin Timberlake. When it's bad, arguments and disappointment hit lower than the voice of Barry White. Although the high notes of a soloist give an audience chills, There's nothing like the combination of love and commitment found in a duet. I've always heard it takes two to make a thing go right. Lovers often found themselves somewhere between A Hard Place and DJ Easy Rock. Lights out. So I'm going to end this poem on another love kind of relationship type poem. This one is called My Girl. So I'm going to do this one kind of my spoken word piece. I want to begin with one and end with one. So this poem is called My Girl. When I'm around you, babe, my self-control is a 4-3 defense. And my heart is calling Kaepernick. Good luck slowing it down. Like the 49ers that travel west, I found my gold. Too valuable to spend, so I keep you in my pocket. Even the scent of your perfume puts me on cloud 9. I'm talking up in the clouds with Snoop, Bob Marley, and Wiz Khalifa. When I look into your eyes, I see our future. Matter of fact, you my brown-eyed time machine. Time stands still when we in the Matrix. I'm popping blue and red pills trying to capture that feeling we first met. I know you remember that night. Gazing into each other's eyes, passing love notes. You made me wish I had amnesia, so I wouldn't be able to remember what life was like without you. Even if I had an argument with the great David Ruffin, I still wouldn't fight the temptation, because you're my girl. Lights out. All right, so that concludes my set of poems for tonight. Once again, I want to thank everybody for their attention, and Andrew and Carolina Poets. And I'm looking forward to hearing my counterparts tonight. So I'm signing off, Mr. Enlightenment. Lights out. Have a good night.
So I just found Mr. Enlightenment on social media. On Instagram, you can follow him. It's Kilowatt Poet. So can you hang out and if we have some questions at the end for the Q&A session?
Yeah, I'll be around.
All right, thank you. So up next, we have Professor Earl Braggs, a UC Foundation and Battle Professor of English at the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga. Earl is the author of 13 collections of poetry. His prizes include the Anhinga Poetry Prize and the Jack Kerouac International Literary Prize. His latest poetry collections are Hat Dancing Moon with Miss Bessie Smith from Yellow Jacket Press and Negro Side of the Moon from C&R Press, and Cruising Weather Wind Blue from Anhinga Press. His memoir is coming out soon from Wet Cement Press. It's called Boy Named Boy. I'm going to drop a link in the comments for pre-order for the book, the memoir, Boy Named Boy. And with that, I bring to the stage Mr. Earl Braggs.
Hey, everyone. Glad to be here tonight. I'm going to start by reading a poem called Hat Dancer Blue. And it's the title poem for this book, Hat Dancer Blue. Standing here smoking my 70-second cigarette in 23 hours, staring into the face of every woman who passes, I think perhaps I should apologize. Looking for you in their fleeting eyes, I know I won't. The night air down here is cool avenue blue. Looking up, I can only imagine you standing there by the light of your window, 35 stories above this street level man you loved those 12 years. There's a full moon out tonight. So maybe I'll cross this street of mad traffic blues into our small town and find us racing across perfect cornfields, you in shorts and your brother's shirt, years too big, and me in raggedy jeans. That was the year of the Merry-Go Carnival, with the bag-legged circus clowns smiling purple smeared smiles. I loved you more than that 57 Chevy Tommy left when he went off to war. So many years have passed, and we push the memories into the goodwill corners of some forgotten woman's blue room like unwanted toys we've outgrown. Remember that diamond ring I stole for $17? And how we laughed and laughed and laughed when it turned your finger green? And yes, the children are almost grown now. Yesterday, the circus came to town, and I dreamed I was the blue wind that stole your lover man's hat. But it didn't fit the way it did when I was a kid, 17, awkward, wearing my father's shoes. Tonight, I'm wearing a faded Yankee blue baseball cap and an overcoat. My collar is turned up tight to fight the night wind that's trying to steal my mind. And yes, my dear Angelina, I know you won't answer, but I'll be calling you from this dusty blue corner street phone that smiles at everyone passing as it eats my last quarters without saying thank you for using AT&T in the voice of a sweet woman. I never went to Vietnam, but I was old enough to go to Vietnam, and I actually volunteered. I was in the Air Force, and I actually volunteered to go to Vietnam. And so I guess they thought that I was too crazy to be sent, so they sent me to the Philippines. But anyway, I've always felt that being a poet, I had a stage, and so I wanted to use my place on stage to speak for some of my friends and people that I didn't know who went to Vietnam and didn't come back, and some of the ones that did come back didn't really come back. In graduate school, my teacher told me not to write about anything that I didn't know, what the hell I was talking about, right? And I sent this poem out, and it got picked up, published immediately. And I showed it to her, and she said, well, maybe I was wrong. She said, maybe the trick is coming to know something versus knowing about it. And so this poem is called Vietnam Revisited. The speaker has never been to Vietnam, yet he was there. I spent a year in the mouth of a dragon before they shipped me here, was all he said as I took a seat across the aisle from him. Maybe 50 miles of horses and cows passed before I turned to look at him. The war was never real to me until I looked into those wild army green eyes, scanning the purple red horizon, blazing like an M16 with a full metal jacket. Those eyes says he sees everything, things that are there and things that are not there. He smiles at me, blinking. He shoots at everything that hints a move. The day turned dusty gray, then pitch black and haunting. We talked from Macon, Georgia, until we were lost in the red Georgia hills of Southeast Asia. He told me about the night sky over Da Nang and how the stars are always brightest just before the clouds came out to color the night flesh tone pink. The sky was so light you could see the face of the enemy like a flash photograph. He told me how you couldn't smell heroin burning until it burned you in two, and how he was the tunnel rat, the bravest man in the platoon, crawling down into that black hole, not coming up until the full moon showed its face on the other end. Listening, I heard grenades rolling around on the floor beneath my feet. I could see war raging in his 22-year-old face, like a wild horse captured in the Saigon heat. A street covered with broken bottles of fear spilling into the rearview mirror of a bus driver driving troops into the mouth of the Tet Offensive. Into the eyes of your foxhole mate who turned out to be Charlie, tapping you on the shoulder to wake you up with a single round between the eyes point blank, straight as a dart thrown at a bull paralyzed from the head down, painted dead red on a board in the front street of a Vietnam bar full of drunk soldiers and sailor boys, unaware that tomorrow they will wake up dead with purple hearts dangling around their necks, decked out in Navy and Army dress blue, taking a slow train back to Georgia. Your mother will not recognize you, laid out and draped in blood white, and boo, I scared you, he said, loud enough for the driver to hear. Somewhere along the way, he opened a bottle and passed it back and forth until everyone seated near had moved into those red Georgia hills, hiding their faces behind tall seats. We talked about the white-only bars on To-Do Street, and the nobody ever called me a nigger while I was toting a Mazuka Soul Brothers that kicked the door in like John Wayne, how he used to smoke marijuana laced with heroin, and he'd kick Charlie in the ass and shoot him in the face and not blink an eye. Then, after a long silence, he told me about the night he died, the night he got a telegram from home that read, "Your baby brother was killed yesterday. Stop." The police said it was self-defense. Stop. He turned and looked at me with those wild army green eyes and said, I was supposed to be the one to die. I was supposed to be the one to die. The words echoed and faded into the humming of the highway. Everyone is asleep now, except 2 cigarettes glowing orange in the pitch black Vietnam night. I'm going to read a title poem from this book. The book's called Walking Back from Woodstock. Thus, the title is Walking Back from Woodstock. I read this quite often, and the question that I get is, did you go to Woodstock? And I say, no, I didn't go to Woodstock, but I did walk back. Walking back from Woodstock. And this is the way I must come to tell you about the night of the rainstorm. She was an ordinary woman, a woman I'd known only from the way she looked at me when you were not looking. Her room was ordinary. She asked if I would come in. I was walking back from Woodstock. You'd walked away from me. Santana was nothing but a broken guitar string. I needed everything like a little boy. I had one hand in my pocket, one hand on her steering wheel, and one hand in my other pocket. She stopped, so I got in. Her car was an ordinary car, a Plymouth or Dodge or 65 Ford, I don't know. The back seat is what I remember. It was full of sweet-smelling pool water, blue water. I wanted to drown in the smell of lilac that night, but her tub had the claws of a lion, and I was afraid. How then, tell me, can I describe the diameter of bubbles without revealing the secrets of such blue water? Merely to say it was a season for giving flowers is not enough. There was a storm. It was raining as it hadn't rained before. I was walking back from Woodstock. She stopped. I got inside. She turned her radio on. It wasn't loud. The splash of blue water. In a season for giving flowers. Sometimes April is a cruel month. But it wasn't that night. It was raining, and she stopped for me. So, to this ordinary woman, whom I could never love, I gave the most beautiful bunch of wildflowers. Her room was an ordinary room. Her cat, ordinary, never spoke to me. The back seat, as I remember, warm and blue, she invited me in. I'd known her only from the way she stared at me when you were not looking. I was walking back from Woodstock. You'd walked away. It was raining. She was going my way. She stopped. Her car was ordinary. I got in. Warm blue water, scented oil, candles, flowers placed afloat as lilies on a pond, prince or frog, not for me to decide. I needed a ride. It was raining. If I cannot remember a thing she said that evening, isn't it like she never said a thing that evening? If I cannot remember the touch of her skin, isn't it like I never touched her at all? I was walking back from Woodstock. I needed a ride. I needed to look into her ordinary eyes so I could see her ordinary face, but I saw nothing ordinary at all. I was afraid. It was a fast car. Her tub had the claws of a lion. I was walking along a road, looking for Jack Kerouac and Neil Cassidy, writing my poems like John Berryman, sleeping in the woods until I no longer wanted to be Henry David Thoreau. But you know what, Sarah? In that room, that night in that car, in the back seat, pool water blue, lying asleep with your back to me in our ordinary bed, in our ordinary room, is all I remember. My, how time passes. I want to read a couple more before I call it an evening. This poem is called Miles Davis Plays Trumpet at the Funeral of Malcolm X. I could begin by telling you he rode two horses at once without falling off, only to fall between the legs of the Nation of Islam. I could tell you that this is Harlem 1965, and Malcolm is still standing there next to that dining room window, peeking out through a rifle and a scope. But I won't. What I will tell you is this. Today is Sunday. Sunday is nigger fried chicken day. Sunday is movie day here at the Folsom County Prison. We're watching a movie, a John Wayne picture show in slow motion black and white. Outside, it's raining crows. Inside this place is a storm brewing in a percolating coffee pot. So death is no stranger when he walks in and says Malcolm X is dead. I cannot describe the sad smell of fear in the cup of hot coffee too black to drink, spilling into my lap, spilling onto the front page of every newspaper, locked in newspaper boxes on every street corner in the United States of America, just down the street from here. Here's a dime for 10 slanted pages of 10 slanted lies. I know it as it was. Malcolm was standing, then he fell. Then he bled. Then he died like a dog in the road. That's all. Now he's no more than an Alex Haley comic book Superman. Look at me. I'm a comic. Laugh. It's a funny thing how things happen just like in the movies, just like James Dean and Steve McQueen, just like Tyrone, just like me. I've been locked up in this prison for 3 years, 17 days, and 9 hours. Sometimes at night, I turn out the lights and dream backwards between bars and stripes and movie stars. But this ain't no movie house popcorn picture show sticking to the floor. It's blood that makes a wedding rose red enough to decorate the dead. Outside, the rain has stopped, but the crows are not gone. They're hovering over the kill. The fried chicken is gone. What did you expect? Are you surprised? I am not. It's hot in here. The movie is now over, and yes, John Wayne got the girl, as he always does. Did you think he didn't or he wouldn't? Somewhere, somehow, some way, a trumpet begins to blow, softly at first, then slow. I turn to see an image of a man blacker than me leaning into a corner, blacker than Miles Dewey Davis, laying down on top of, someday my prince will come. And I'll close with kind of a complicated poem. I started writing this poem with the intentions of using all numbers. And I found that not possible, of course. But one of the things I discovered is that I was able to take words and make fractions out of them. And so this poem was, I read it in, I think it was Tallahassee, Florida, and some editor, publisher came up on the stage after the reading and asked if they could publish it. So it's called Before and After the Aftermath, 9 times 11 equals 23. And it is, of course, a 9/11 poem. The subtitle of this poem is called The Second Assassination of John, Bobby, Abraham, and Martin. Everything begins at the beginning. Therefore, the tragedy of Gotham looks all the way back to Y1K plus 400 plus 92Y equals 1776 over 13 stars divided by 13 faded stripes draped over noise now over yesterday divided by tomorrow over if it comes again into that blue Gotham City morning of remembering how civil a civil war refuses to be. Y1K plus 800 plus 65Y divided by 2 equals one nation under God's speed equals distance over time divided by time over speed equals time square clock stopped, but light still travels in a straight line. Timeline, Tyrone was still asleep. So N over O equals no time 0 over 0 at ground level. 0 equals man over hat equals tan black billowing black smoke billowing into the choking history of pearl over 7 times December over harbor equals Y1K 914 minus FD over R still with us smoking a pipe speaking nothing to fear but fear itself. Now, why then still man over hat equals tan, black billowing black smoke over NYC, attributable to the angry, distorted disposition of Ben over Osama times 4 airline flights of compressed confusion divided by Jesus over Allah, inverted without warning to Allah over Jesus times 9 times 11 equals 23. Timeline. Roz had just missed his train. Oliver was waiting for the liquor store to open. The trigonometry of right triangles turned abrupt left and abruptly left all seats empty. Timeline. Allison was feeding her new baby. The captain has turned off the no smoking sign. Timeline. Sam was stuck on an LA freeway. Where were you? Factored into the smoke-filled graphic solution of near simultaneous quadratic explosion on national TV. Liberty herself resigned to the stature of what over if the captain has turned off the AK-47 plus 1 equals AK-48 plus 2 equals 50 United States of confusion lowered at half past mast or mass greater than or equal to 19 boys, 17 plus 2 or 16 plus 3 or 18 plus 1 all equal 19 dead cigarette boys, 19 dead night light box cut not to fit beneath the airplane seat, perplexed format of where were you? I was having my second cup of Starbucks. Timeline. Frida was walking her dog, listening to headphones on the radio, 93.5 FM divided by C over n squared equals CNN reports 3000 DOA minus 1492 divided again into 1776 equals 1 U and 1 I over 9 times 11. Light travels in a straight line. Timeline. Amir was walking home after midnight shift. Susan was planning her third wedding. Miss Jones was taking morning attendance. Miss Miller was watching rerun soap operas. Oliver was waiting for the liquor store to open. Where were you? 4 lines of angry air, no easy despair spills onto FAA flight plan pages of you are now free to move about the cabin. In case of an, your seat cushion can be used as a flotation device. Thank you so much.
Earl, thank you. I think we're all just doing kind of a wow right now. Can you hang out for some questions at the end?
Certainly,
All
certainly.
right, great. Thank you. So, up next in our reading, we have the poet Bill Newby. Bill uses poetry and prose to record, reshape, and reflect upon daily experience. His work has appeared in Whiskey Island, The Bluffton Breeze, Ohio Teachers Write, Palm Beach Poetry Festival's Fish Tales Contest, the Blue Mountain Review, Panoply I think I'm saying that right, Sixfold, and also 3 of the Island Writers Network anthologies. He was a 2018 Pushcart Poetry Prize nominee and has published 2 collections, Sea Chests or a Carry-On, and Passing Through. You can check out his work at billnewby.net, and I'll drop that link in the chat. So welcome to the virtual stage, Bill Newby.
Good evening, everyone. It's an honor to be here with Mr. Enlightenment and Earl. We've had some really interesting work delivered tonight. I love the lights on, lights out feature that Mr. Enlightenment uses, and I wish I was walking back from Woodstock. So I've been writing for well over 50 years, and when I tell people that I'm a poet, they're either too intimidated to say anything and don't want to talk about it, or they might ask me, well, what kind of poetry do you write? And I've gotten that question so often, I finally have come to say, I'm an everyday poet. I just write about stuff that's happening, that's normal, that's around. And being 76, it just so happens that I still have many ambitions. And one of them is that one day I hope I'll be able to join the Hole in One Club. I'm still waiting for my magic shot. Every other week, someone else's name graces the pro shop's door, and we're invited to get our free drink over the next 2 weeks, a chance to join the celebration and schmooze with the current star who's been given license to strut and gloat. Joy comes to some of us in more modest attire, like finding the fairway or landing near the green. So we practice and practice, place another and another ball on the ground or tee, while muttering mantras like stay in the shot. And swing by swing, we try to chisel a groove into our hands and arms, torso and thighs, a groove we hope to easily revisit, like the way our fingers tie a shoelace or our hands draw a razor across our cheek. But for many of us, our bodies are forgetful. And like traveling without directions, we amble from stop sign to stop sign, making stab after stab, hoping for the best. So in those rare moments when anyone hits from the tee box and drops that 2-inch ball into that 4-inch hole, it feels as miraculous as water changing into wine, or at least a beer or mixed drink at the bar. So sports have been a big part of my life. I consider myself a mediocre all-around athlete, meaning that I seem to have been able to play anything that was in my youth, but I never did anything particularly well. And at one point in time, when I did get to play softball or baseball, I loved trying to play third base. So this is a poem called Sending a Kiss from Third. Every infield is different. The ground may be as smooth as tarmac or loose as a hiking trail, groomed like the Masters, or as shaggy and snarled as the Turner's tree lawn. But the only way to play is with hope for a true bounce and prayer to snatch a liar. The game is slow, with lots of room to itch and scratch, spit and stare, but the window for strolling and shifting shuts when the ball leaves the pitcher's hand. Then it's time for low, ready balance, each foot dug in, hugging the earth, and arms long and loose before bent knees, like willow branches nearing the ground. But as low as you get, your head must be up, as if you've crept close in a tiger crouch, with your muscles loaded and ready to pounce. And in these key seconds, the world must disappear for the only stories at the plate where you need to read the back and arms unwinding torque as the bat flows in a wide circle and greets the ball with a crack or ping that darts like a bullet aimed at your head or skitters like a stone skipping water, seeking a pebble or divot that might shift its course. This is what you've trained for and why you've oiled your glove, pounded a predictable pocket, and even taken dance lessons. In this instant, the only time is now. Now you must welcome its flight, delight in its arrival, and reach wide or close, low or high to draw it into your mitt, embrace it with your free fingers, and hug and grasp it as you slide toward first, skating left while loading right, loading your arm like a jitterbug backstep before pulling your partner into another twirl, gripping the ball like a doorknob before flinging it wide open. Then whip your arm free and relaxed, free and flowing across your body as you turn around your spine and look at the first baseman's mitt like a lover's face, arced up and begging for a kiss as you let the ball go. So lately it's been a really unusual time. Today is the celebration, I should not say celebration, it's the anniversary of the World Health Organization declaring a worldwide pandemic. And that has, needless to say, affected us all. So this is a little reflection on the pandemic precaution. No more hugs, handshakes, or kisses, even those that feel apathetically routine, like boxed crackers as an appetizer instead of something artful that took hours to prepare and arrange just so. Now, doors are closing, parties are shutting down, and soon the bowling alley will go silent. No more cradle, carry, swing, and release, ending in a distant smash and clatter. No more standing over the shoulder of a teammate or scorekeeper and moving in close to whisper advice. 20 seconds, scrubbing knuckles, drawing suds through finger gaps, and back and forth across each back and heel feels like forever. And elbow bumps are as unfulfilling as dry bread sandwiches without the meat. Azaleas are in bloom, trees are starting to bud, birds are singing, and daylight's inching farther and farther into night. But we're headed indoors, as if fleeing sleet. There better be another dawn after this dark night. Over the last 6 or 7 years, my wife and I lived in Hilton Head, And when we were in Hilton Head, I was very fortunate to be welcomed to Friday lunches with a group of guys called the Motos, which stands for Men on Their Own. It was a delight. And this is a poem called Motovation. Each waitress smiles when we say one check, then circles the table taking drink orders as we scan the menu and discuss daily specials. It's a ritual as casual as combing hair or walking down the drive near dawn to retrieve the morning paper. We're not there for serious work, and the meal's just another kind of clock, something advancing in stages till we pay the bill and know it's time to leave. From the first handshake to the last goodbye, we're practicing the art of chumminess, being easy friends sharing stories and bits of current news like paging through a weekly paper, headlines on hurricanes or home repair, box scores of favorite teams or stocks, and a glance at recent comics, but always treading cautiously near editorials to keep the group intact. The cost of real estate creates some commonality. Everyone can travel and leave a hefty tip, but like every classroom of every school, homogeneity is a myth, and difference is everywhere. So we still need to reach to imagine growing in another place, working another job, and what it feels like to have different children, wives, and skills. But when we part, the week feels more complete, the street in better repair, and the world a bit more in tune. Today there's a lot of news about the pressure of migrants at the Texas border. And it just so happens my grandparents were immigrants. My father's parents came from England, my mother's from the Ukraine. And they were seeking, of course, opportunity, but they were also seeking safety. And when I think about this, I think about my grandparents and those trying to move to safety. This poem's called Moving to Safety. When the waves came over the side, Mom's grip hurt my wrist, and there was screaming everywhere. "Are we okay, Mama?" I asked. Are we okay? But everyone was shouting, and I could see she didn't hear me. Her face looked tight, her lips quivering, and her eyes were fixed forward. "Ahmed, Ahmed," she called across the crowd and pulled me closer as we were tossed right and left. Water climbed my socks and my pants felt cold. Then, like bullies on a teeter-totter, the raft tilted right and everyone slid down where the next wave washed over us, splashed across my hair and face, sloshed into my open collar, and trickled down my chest and arms. When I looked up, I could see she was still seeking Father, and as she pulled me closer, we dropped, and the life jacket pressed against my ears. She was breathing hard, holding me with one hand, moving the other back and forth and saying, "Sayakum Biakar, it'll be okay, it'll be okay." There were others in the water, hidden and revealed by each passing wave, hidden and revealed by silence and shouting and silence. The raft disappeared. The calls got softer. Her hand slipped off my wrist. There were stars all across the sky. So I want to change pace for just a second. I want to read a poem that I wrote in the 1970s. And those of you who are listening who are poets, you know that sometimes, especially in love, a poem arrives almost completely of its own. It writes itself. My recollection is that this poem took perhaps 5 minutes to come into its being, and I touched very little on it after that. It's important to know that the last word of this poem is new. It sounds like NEW, but the actual word is NOUS, which means us in French. Those deep brown eyes, they speak to me. They call from shadows ceaselessly. I bend an ear to hear their call, to see their gleam, to yet recall your scent, your touch, your loving grace, the longing look upon your face. And tenderly you still are there, opening your arms and bidding fair that I embrace and hold you tight all through the day, all through the night. And eager I jump in the dream, ever hoping that it will seem reality for me, for you, for all, forever, for now, for new. I think I have time for a couple more. I trust Andrew will interrupt me if I don't. As I said, I try to write about everything. I think of everyday poet. So I'm assuming everyone that's listening tonight or at any time owns a pair of jeans and probably, like me, washes them. So this is a poem called Clean Pants. Freshly washed jeans hug my legs and girdle my waist. The buttonhole and stud behave like feuding neighbors and need a tug across my belly's street before they're forced to shake hands. And each pocket is similarly unaccommodating. My handkerchief has a reservation in the left rear, but the door is tightly closed, and I need to force it in to get it seated. On mornings like this, I check the mirror or step on the scale to see if I'm getting fat. But I'm just myself, garbed in American casual, the unpleated bridge between rich and poor. And as the hours pass, the weave relaxes, as if attending fabric yoga, where space is breathed into each pocket and comfort is restored. I have a friend whose hobby is making stained glass pieces. And about 5 years ago, he gave a workshop and showed how he did stained glass. So this is a poem called Lampke's Stained Glasses. He said that there are patterns everywhere, in books, museums, shops, and cathedrals. So there's no need for originality, just a lifetime's collection of tools, glass, copper foil, flux, and solder. Yes, you do need a plan. Some design placed on two templates, one intact and the other in pieces, like your vision of a satisfying life, and the fragments of dinners and conversations, jobs, friendships, travels, and pastimes that might eventually complete the puzzle. But success demands surrender, giving in to accidents, to the reality of never being in full control. For as carefully as you score and then tap a pane, like life, it can fracture in unexpected places that demand a fresh approach to beauty. In the end, everything is built with patience, leftover pieces and nicks and cuts along the way. And though labeled stained, it's not about flaws blemishing purity. The goal is to find an inspiring light and let it shine through. And I'm looking at the time. I would like to share 2 more pieces if I can. The first one Some of us, if you're a writer, you know what it feels like to have a dry spell when it seems like your muse is on vacation. And I've experienced the same at times. So this is called My Missing Muse. My muse went on vacation. I get depressed when she's not home. I launched a search across the nation. I try to cope, but feel alone. I get depressed when she's not home. When she left, the fridge was bare. I try to cope, but feel alone. I can't cook without her there. When she left, the fridge was bare, nothing to nibble, nothing to try. I can't cook without her there. She didn't even kiss me goodbye. Nothing to nibble, nothing to try. I miss her singing and her joy. She didn't even kiss me goodbye. I wish she wasn't being so coy. I miss her singing and her joy. She was my lover all last year. I wish she wasn't being so coy. Her absence leaves me full of fear. She was my lover all last year. She cooked, she cleaned, she polished. Her absence leaves me full of fear. I'm starving and feeling demolished. She cooked, she cleaned, she polished. My muse went on vacation. I'm starving and feeling demolished. I need her back for recreation. She'd better have a good explanation. And finally, if I may, I'd like to share a poem called Closed. It's another poem about writing. Closed. My pen likes to wander by classrooms and stores, up church aisles and garden paths, through bedrooms and meals, into caves and storms and moonless nights. It's taken me down many dark alleys, into hidden corners of adolescence, indecision, disgust, and doubt. And sometimes I've escaped with humor or found a freshly powered flashlight that helped me climb stairwells to new understanding. But some doors remain firmly closed. And even if I can peek through the keyhole, I'm hesitant to pick the lock, raise the shades, and schedule an open house. Some stories are beyond the razor wire and should stay there. So thank you very much for allowing me to read. I'm very grateful to Andrew and Carolina Poets for making this reading possible.
Thank you very much, Bill. And I'm going to bring each of our poets back on stage. If you have any questions for our poets, please ask them in the chat. We'll have a few minutes of Q&A. So we do have a question up front for Earl. So Earl, Barbara is asking, what is your favorite Kerouac book?
Of course, On the Road, but I like Pick. But I guess On the Road is the one that actually went on the road with me when I was on the road writing a novel, looking for Jack Kerouac.
Yeah, it's kind of a cataclysmic for a lot of us, right?
Yes.
So I have a question for our poets in general. So the question is, what do you do for your downtime when you're not writing? And how does what you do in your downtime inform your writing? And if we can, we'll go in reverse order. We'll start with Bill and then go back to in reverse order. Bill, tell us about your downtime.
Well, Mary Oliver once said, and I'm paraphrasing, she said, pay attention, be amazed, write about it. And so I don't know that I do anything special in my downtime.
We know you golf.
Yeah, golf, work in the yard, try to go for walks with Barbara, doing all the normal things. But as I'm, I think like any poet, I'll go through the day and something will strike me. Something happens that's interesting. It may be totally normal. Everybody does it, but it's just I notice it that day. And I might make a note of it and then come back to it and see where it leads me, see what it generates. So that's mostly it.
Earl, how about you? Tell us about your downtime.
Well, I love working in the garden. I love black and white photography, although I don't own a camera. But I had the story of owning a whole bunch of camera equipment when I was much younger, and it was taken away from my writing. And I would go shooting versus go writing. So I took all the camera equipment to the pawn shop. It was about $3,500 worth of camera equipment. They gave me $200 for it, $250, and that was the happiest day of my life because it kind of freed me to be able to write. So now I'm kind of in the writing mode pretty much all the time, but I do take breaks, and when I take my breaks, of course, I love teaching, and like I said, working in the yard and walking and running, playing tennis and playing chess, and having parties and all of those kinds of things.
That's right. I think the writer's always writing, right? Mr. Enlightenment, so I love your signature at the end of a lot of the poems, "Lights Out." I just love that. It's like it's something that makes your poems unique. Tell us how you come up with that, and then tell us about your downtime and how it informs your writing.
Well, it's kind of like the lights out was like when people end a poem, sometimes it's like that awkward silence there, like nobody knows, like, is it a pause or is the poem over? So that was kind of like my way of ending it. And it made sense with my whole light bulb and light theme. So I just started doing it.
I like it. I love that.
And I'm a big social media guy, so a lot of the stuff that like trending topics and all, and what everybody's talking about, current events I write about. I've been dabbling with the micro poetry lately too. Kind of started with Twitter, so I've been posting like few lines, try to pack an idea into a few lines. I've been experimenting with that kind of poetry lately. But I do outside of teaching. I just started back with some social sports leagues. I played softball for a long time, even like some adult kickball. So going out there and still trying to be a washed up athlete. So
Hey, as long as you feel good doing it, that's great. That's great. So I have one last question. We'll see if any other questions come in for the poets. But the question is, has the pandemic impacted the themes of your work? And I have a friend who says poets are always writing the same poem, right? They're always looking at it from a different angle. But do you find that the pandemic's given you new themes, or are you still writing about the same themes you were prior? And Earl, let's start with you.
Well, early on, I got my first haiku published. uh, Haiku called 19. It was published at the request of the mayor of Tampa, Florida. Um, and after that, I wrote a COVID poem. And one of the things that I discovered as I was writing the COVID poem is uh, one of the positive things that came out of this whole situation for me was I live in an area where lots of people walk, and then all of a sudden, March of last year, everybody started walking. And so I started to meet neighbors and find out about them, things beyond, like I knew them. I knew the color of the car they drove, and I knew the general direction where the car came from. But during this COVID year, we actually got to know each other. Now I know how long they've been living in Chattanooga. I know that they are from Cleveland, Ohio. I know that they work at this place or that place, and they have kids, and the kids went to this college and that college, and so they're just not a color of a car anymore. All the neighbors on left and right, they're just not colors of cars anymore. They're real people.
Yeah, it's funny how this thing that's supposed to keep us apart in some ways has brought us together in new kinds of communities like these online communities. Bill, how about you? What kind of downtime? Well, I'm sorry, the pandemic question to you. So, has it impacted the themes of your work, or are you still writing about the same themes?
Well, what's happened is that I've actually written some poems specifically about the pandemic. I mean, there's certain things that I now do that I didn't do before. My wife's very protective of both of us. And so I wind up being the first person in the grocery store, or maybe the fourth person into Lowe's. I went to Lowe's this morning and I got grilled when I came home, and I explained to my wife I didn't see anybody. I checked out myself. I just lived differently. And so some of those experiences have caused me to write about some different stuff. But at the same time, it's a lot of similar things that still interest me: the way people interact, what we believe, what we do with our time, and so forth. So there's a lot of commonality, and then there's a little difference. And the one key difference is that the irony of the pandemic is that whereas it separated us physically, it's bonded us virtually. And I think that's really interesting, to being able to be a participant, like in this reading or in poetry workshops, where people that are participating live too far away from each other for people to be, getting in a car and coming together. And like right now, where I'm teaching students that are, living in Hilton Head, but I'm in Ohio, stuff like that. So it's very interesting. There's two sides to the pandemic, and it's changed some of my writing, but not entirely.
You, Mr. Enlightenment, are you writing any pandemic poems? Have you found anything new, or are you still revisiting the same themes you were working on before?
I'm pretty much a lighthearted poet, but like the last year, I started doing a little more like activism type poems, or just dealing more with racism and like the deeper topics, just because that was like a constant thing going on. So I kind of tackled that a little more than I have been before.
Okay. I got a question in the chat. Anybody that wants to take this can take it. During the pandemic, is it more difficult to write happy themes, happy poems? Anybody have a thought on that?
Well, I don't necessarily think so, because in the grand scheme of things, we've been in many ways, always in a pandemic in America. Maybe it was a racism pandemic or sexism pandemic or something. We've always been in that, and I am a political poet, and I am on top of what's current and historically speaking, at the forefront. And so I don't think where I write from has had a rebirth or anything. It's kind of always been there. I've always been kind of like Leroy Jones. He was named the poet laureate of New Jersey, and I think it lasted one day or maybe 2 days because he said something outrageous, and they just kind of took it back from him. I've always been on the front end of dealing with topics, political topics in that way.
So in a sense, some of the issues we've gone through, the society's consciousness is catching up with you a little bit, maybe, right? Or people are bringing up issues that, folks have known about for a long time and written about for a long time.
Yeah.
How about you guys, writing any happy poems?
Well, I want to say I can't say that I've written happy poems, but I've experienced a lot of humor. And so I don't think that the pandemic's very serious, to say the least, but I still find that in my life that there's a lot of things that make me laugh and that make me happy. And so, it's what I want to say is that if something struck me as funny, then I would write about it. I don't think that the pandemic would keep me from doing that.
How about you, Mr. Enlightenment?
Yeah, I say the same. Like there's always some like you said, humor. There's a lot of humor in the midst of all the tragedy and the crisis that's been going on. There's been so I'm just so everybody's like in the social media become a big thing because nobody was going anywhere. So everybody kind of went to social media. It's like this kind of whole platform. If you weren't going anywhere, so this became another avenue to entertain yourself. So as long as people have been having something to do and laughing is always going to be a part of my day. But I think the opportunity to write something happy is there. I don't think it, like I said, because even when everybody was out living their lives normally, there was always the bad things that were going on. So I feel like it's still a balance of good and bad, and as far as inspiration goes.
So we do have another question here, which is kind of fun. Have any of you written a farewell poem to Donald Trump? Anybody done that? George?
I haven't written a farewell. I did start a poem that kind of like, it has Trump theme, but it's kind of like just overall like wordplay, but not like dedicated to saying goodbye to him.
Yeah. I've written some poems that are Trump, that are about Trump, and I can paraphrase one of them. I can just tell you the situation. I'd have to work to find the poem, but I was challenged a year ago to write a Halloween poem, and I wrote a poem that I called Horror Film, and to say the least, it featured its star character would have been President Trump.
Yeah, I wrote one early on about Trump. I haven't written a farewell one because I've been too busy celebrating. But an image from the one that I wrote was something along the lines of, how many white men with yellow hair does it take to change the direction of the world?
Great question. I'm going to ask one more, and we'll answer quickly, and I'll let you gentlemen have back your evening. If you would share with us what you're reading at the moment, just whatever book you're reading, or whatever writer you're reading.
So I'm reading Coulson Whitehead's novel, The Nickel Boys, and it's about it's about a boy. He's African American, and he kind of, I guess he's probably he's a symbol of all of the things that can go wrong for a young male, and it's a scary book.
Yeah, Coulson Whitehead is amazing. He really is. What about you guys? Anything that you're reading that you want to share?
Well, I'm reading John Meacham's Thomas Jefferson biography. I've been writing a series of poems dealing with people like Sally Henning, and one of the things that I want to mention is, and that Thomas Jefferson was actually in love with Sally Henning, and the years that they were married, he was president, and so in actuality, Sally Henning was the first lady of the United States of America during that time.
That's true.
Wow. That's pretty neat. Yeah. Mr. Enlightenment, or what's on your nightstand? What are you reading?
Most of my stuff that I read is like children's literature right now. We had just celebrated like the Dr. Seuss's birthday, so we were reading some of that and just trying to touch base with a lot of different, exposing them to nonfiction and even actually some poems recently.
That's great. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for being featured readers tonight. I'm going to close us out. I really thank you for your time. It was fantastic. Thank you so much.
Earl, thank you. Joey, thank you.
So thank you for attending Poetry Goes Viral. This is a reading series hosted by the Carolina Poets Facebook page and YouTube channel. We host readings on the second and fourth Thursday of each month. We feature established poets and emerging voices. I'd like to thank each of our readers this evening for their participation, and thank you very much for watching. Check out the links to the poets' work, and as always, support the work that moves you. Support artists by buying the work that moves you. Thank you so much.